welcome to this fantastic session on data at Technoviti 2022. Friends, today we are talking everything about innovation in this carnival of innovations here. In the first session, which is Technoviti, talking about all the fintechs and all the innovation heads who have been innovating profusely for taking the business of financial services to the next level. Data has always been the center of attraction for most of these conversations. Some call it as the oil of the new economy. Some call it as the foundation stone of business growth. Whatever it is, ultimately, all of us are really going to exploit, harness, harvest, and take our businesses to the new level using this effective tool called as data. And what is happening today is that this data, if it is kept within a particular segment of the industry, then the entire ecosystem cannot harness the benefits of this data. And in a financial services ecosystem, which is interdependent with each other for risk management, for compliance, which is regulated, this kind of effective and regulated sharing of data is very important. Let us now talk to some very, very interesting luminaries from the financial services sector, especially from the fintechs in India, on how they are harnessing this data, securing this data, sharing this data, and caring about this data and making sure that it is not exploited, but it is harnessed and harvested well to benefit the entire industry on its own. I would first like to introduce Naseem Haldar, the CISO of ECHO, to please come and give a brief about name of the organization, your role, and we go ahead with the introduction.
First of all, thanks for having me here. Myself Naseem Haldar. I take care of ECHO's information security. My official designation is Chief Information Security Officer, and ECHO is a general insurance company, and we are into that complete digital platform.
Now, the second gentleman I would like to introduce in this is Gaurav Lahoti, who is the VP Engineering at Khatabuk. Can I ask Gaurav to please give a quick introduction?
Yeah, hello everyone. This is Gaurav. I lead the engineering at Khatabuk. So Khatabuk basically is a business utility and financial services application for all micro, small and medium-sized businesses in India.
Wonderful. Welcome, Gaurav. Can I request Mr. Yashwant Lodha of Pay Nearby to give his introduction?
Thank you, Mr. Nair. Thank you for having me. I'm Yashwant Lodha. I'm a co-founder at Pay Nearby. We work on bringing the high end of financial services to the mass of India spread in the urban poor as well as in the deep rural areas of the country.
Wonderful. May I now request Mr. Vijay Kumar Ramakrishna to share his introduction.
Thanks, Babu, and all the respected panelists. So my name is Vijay. I am the Chief Technology Officer of Clicks Capital. Clicks Capital was erstwhile GE Capital. We are an NBFC, a book size of approx 4,000 crore now, aiming to be 7,500 to 8,000 by March 2025. So we aspire to be the fastest in the digital world, means we want to do lending. Our core businesses are personal loans, business loans, loan against property, healthcare, equipment financing, and co-lending. So our head office is in Gurgaon, and we are present in around 11 locations across India, and we are planning to increase by 10 more locations this year.
Thank you very much, Babu. At the outset, thanks for inviting me to this august panel of jury. Just to introduce myself, my name is R. Shankar, and I'm a global banker with over 26 plus years of experience, and I'm currently based in Nairobi in Kenya. Thank you.
May I request Abhishek to kindly share your introduction?
Thank you, Babu. Glad to be part of this eminent panel. My name is Abhishek Bansal. I head non-financial risk, and I'm Chief Information Security Officer for Max Life Insurance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Varundeep, can I have your introduction, please?
Thank you very much, Mr. Nair. Happy to be part of this panel discussion. I am Varundeep Kaur, CIO, Spice Money. Just to brief, Spice Money is a leading rural fintech, and we serve tier 3 and tier 4 cities and help them getting more involved into financial inclusion.
Wonderful. Welcome, gentlemen. So let us get into the the course of the discussion. We all know that data is the center of our business, and sharing of data is one of the most important aspects required to take forward our business to the next levels. So what are the kind of opportunities that we see in data sharing as of today? And how are we going about it? I would like to start with Yash. Yash, what is your perspective about the business opportunities in data sharing today?
Thank you, Babu. So what we see in our business, right, specifically, we are catering to a large population of the country for whom digital data availability itself is a challenge, right? Therefore, as a business, and when we are able to aggregate and generate a lot of data about a segment for whom digital data itself availability is very, very low, it is incumbent on people like us to make it available to a larger populace of service providers that can leverage it and give more and more services to customers, right? So one core benefit that I see of data sharing is availability of service provider, or giving comfort to service providers to provide services, maybe whether it be credit, whether it be banking services, whether it be even insurance, etc., right, to people who do not have a lot of digital trail. Second core benefit that I see of digital data sharing is the ability to control risks and frauds in the ecosystem, right? See, eventually barring blips in frauds, all frauds and risk methodologies eventually become an MO, and MO starts showing patterns. Patterns are best harnessed if an aggregated data set is available that can pre-warn agencies of the potential risk that the customer carries. A lot like what credit rating agencies have been doing in the lending business for eons. That this is something else that we see that can be created out of it. Third is data sharing by itself can reduce the cost of data aggregation. This, what it means is it can reduce monopolistic behaviors that can come across by organizations that have the unfair advantage of very large data sets already available to them, right? By democratizing access to those data in controlled and authorized manners, thereby giving younger, newer players opportunities in the business, which can bring in a lot of innovation. I think these are the three core benefits that I see.
Okay. So, Mr. Nair, how I see this data ecosystem, I see that there are three broad classifications which are possible when it comes to data sharing or the data ecosystem. One is that you can have what you consume within the organization, which is the closed data ecosystem that you have. Other is the open and global ecosystem that you have got. And third is your, which you can say the partnerships or the ecosystem, which has come more from a strategic partnership point of view, right? So when it comes to trust building, one thing that we need to take care and consider is that we as collaboratively, we have to identify the different use cases or opportunities which that industry is facing. And there are certain problems which are across industries, like cybersecurity is there, right? So this issue or the frauds, AML. So these kind of issues are across industry. It is not limited to a specific sector or specific industry. The other thing is, which is important here in terms of trust building, when we have identified a objective that where we need to collaborate or share the information, then we have to be open to co-creation, right? These problems which are across industries, across sectors cannot be solved by one person or one organization. Here the organizations have to collaborate and see a long-term benefit of doing that.
So great, fantastic perspective. Vijay, you are both a CTO as well as you have been a growth officer. Is there any other perspective you see in terms of opportunity in data sharing as of today?
Absolutely. Means the opportunity which I see, like I was just watching a YouTube video where one of the picture was presenting it to the Shark Tank judges that the data which is whatever the data is there, it's value. Am I right? That what if you go and do some search or something, everything is captured and sold to the sponsors, so that you are bombarded with that particular ad. So what they have done is that they have commoditized it. They have stopped the cookies, and whatever data you share, you earn valuable points. So that's an interesting point, that whatever comes free, you are the commodity which gets sold. Am I right? So data sharing, as rightly pointed out by yes, if it is done in a controlled way. What five things, the rule of five which I apply, that I spoke to earlier, that data is all the five things which the value which we can bring in is the first is the speed to market, which I think the business wants changes in their journeys. Almost every 1 or 2 hours they want changes to capture business. So data is extremely important for them to make those decisions. Second, the customer engagement has to be good, because we do a lot of cross selling to the existing customers, because acquiring new customers is much more tougher than cross-selling to the existing set of customers, because that value, the brand which you have established and the trust which you have established with the customer, for which data is extremely important for the business to make that cross-selling decision. Third is the process improvement. We can bring huge process improvement. Recently we did that there used to be 30-35 pager huge document used to come, which we reduced it to 7 pager. We did a deep dive, every CXO sat together in a workshop, and we drastically reduced, which we had the data to go have a deep insights and talk to the customers, that what is stopping them to come back and do business with us, which they said that the documents required is number of pages to be filled and number of documents to be submitted is huge. So that we drastically reduced with the help of data. Fourth is higher returns. Means I think your ROA is very important, which the data can fill in, that if the real-time decisions are made instead of n-30 or n-7 or n-1, if we make data real time, give the data real time to business heads, all the chief risk officer, chief credit officer, they can make real time decisions, which increases the top line, which has impact on bottom line. The fifth, the cost saving. I think we ran this campaign using data, zero waste campaign, which really helped our organization to remove the waste in terms of all, right from the top to bottom, that how can a sales guy focus 90 to 95% of the time what he has hired for, rather than doing the work of the back office or mid office. So that data collection, the data helped us at five top things, going from the bottom to top: cost savings, higher returns, process improvement, customer engagement, and time to market. These are the five things which data can bring value to the organization to unlock the potential of data in the organization.
Abhishek, what new mechanisms do you propose, or what do you suggest?
So, Babu, let me try and answer this from two different dimensions. One from, I think, a larger ecosystem, to an extent what Varun was sharing some of the examples, some of the tenants around. And second is more from a tactical organizational point of view. The reason behind is the frameworks can be laid out at a country level. But when it comes to, let's say, last mile, there will be some tactical mechanisms and measures which need to be kept in mind. So the first portion is around transparency as the golden rule. Right? If the trust needs to be established, if this entire thing for data sharing needs to be enabled, we really need to keep the end customer at the center of it. It is not about the business benefit which actually the sharing of information is enabling, but also the end customer at the end, who is experiencing this. And now how this can be done, to my mind, and it's just a personal view, to my mind, a very prescriptive approach won't work, because there are disparate set of data sets, as was kind of mentioned by Shankar also, different organizations generating different data. I mean, a lot of data is available for sale, let's say, in secondary market, whereby people either take surveys and likewise. So quality of data and what decision is made by it is of utmost importance. Now, who proctors that quality of data? Who gives the confidence that for what purpose it is being shared, whether you're taking my consent or you are actually using it for your own benefit? So why Aadhaar has been successful? Aadhaar has primarily been successful because they're only giving you a flag. They're majorly telling you whether this is an authentic information or not, so that but it is not passing on the information, right? So the end customer somewhere trust that there is an authority who has basically some powers that your data will not be misused, and that's where there is an ecosystem which has been kind of paved way.
Let me talk to Gaurav. What are the technological possibilities for data sharing today? Okay. What kind of methods are used by organizations for data sharing technologically? And how are CTOs and engineering heads looking at acquiring these data for sharing and making it safe as of today? How is the industry taking steps towards it?
So in my experience, I think there is a long way to go in data sharing. I think the ecosystem is just getting started. As Yash had pointed out, the credit, the credit data is something that's relatively easily available because there are some central, agencies that keep track of that. But apart from that, anything else with respect to insurance or be it your bank statements, that's relatively hard to come by, right? I think OCAN, which is the framework which uses account aggregators to help sharing the data easily, that is something that I think we all have high hopes with that. So we will see how well it gets adopted and how it pans out in future. Apart from that, I think what I have seen is the data sharing has been ad hoc. There are some central players who come in, helps with certain set of APIs, where they integrate with a bunch of organizations on the back end and then expose in some format that they have. But it has been a lot ad hoc at this point in time.
Yash, do you have any experiences of data sharing, be it by any of the existing stacks or whatever it is? How has it been for you in your business?
So we have some experience of sharing data because we have a good lending practice that we operate with our retail network, right? Couple of things that we have seen is that these mechanisms of data sharing, whether it be through credit agencies, whether it be evolving and accessing our own data and anonymizing it, right, and then sharing it to partners, is something that is still at an early stage. I believe that these mechanisms, like Gaurav was saying, are evolving. Today, most of the mechanisms of data sharing, I will not say all, most of these mechanisms of data sharing between large entities are point to point. The specific arrangements around which it is done. But the core value add that we have been able to bring into the system is with a tight risk management policy that is covered with ISO 27000 and a tight data storage policy that is mandated through PCI. What we have been able to do is get our retail partners to share part of their data or only relevant elements of their data through an informed consent basis directly through the app. What it has enabled is easy data sharing from the source of where data is generated is what we've been able to do it easier. From the customer to us, data sharing is far easier. From us to external agencies, a lot of it is point to point, but stuff like account aggregator and CKYC, I think will start making meaningful difference over the next 18 to 24 months.
Interesting. And how about this global guys? Do you think global data sharing platforms can make any major benefit in India?
So again, it depends. Especially for us, where the segment to which we are catering to does not itself have a large digital footprint these days today, right? So therefore, global data sharing platforms, to the extent of, let's say, a Visa negative merchant list, may be relevant today. But otherwise, for organizations like us that is serving the mass of India, we need people to first come on such platforms before they start showing relevance as a sharing mechanism to the larger ecosystem.
Wonderful. So Varundeep, what are the kind of opportunities you see in data sharing as of today? And when you do this data sharing or you acquire data sharing, what are the kind of roadblocks you hit in that area?
Right. So, Mr. Nair, I will start that the data has evolved over a period of last 50 years. Like in 1970s, if we see, data has been a result of the processes. Towards 1990s, it became enabler of the processes where we had ERPs and systems, MRP systems. Then data became a enabler of the products, where we had like e-com applications towards 2000s. And in today's economy or in today's world, data is itself a product. We are standing in front of economy, which we can call as a data economy. Data now has a financial value. It is a financial asset. So here, if I see in terms of opportunities, so when we talk about any economy and financial value is associated with anything, that means that there is huge benefits that are there. If we talk about the opportunities, it is not limited to one industry segment. It is across the segments. If you talk about healthcare, you will find that there are a lot of opportunities which are there. In terms of fintech also, there are a lot of opportunities. Like here, government is working in terms of subsidies, in terms of how to enable the rural India in order to make them more financially included, creating more policies which can help them in terms of agriculture, in terms of enabling them, providing the need or catering to the needs of the people, the rural population. And for that, they are doing a lot of surveys.
So Naseem, what are the bottlenecks today when it comes to data security or especially privacy in sharing? And how are organizations today countering it or trying to adapt to it?
Let me give you, let's follow whatever you started with, right? Data is a new fuel, data is a foundation of economy, all these things we know. I would say data is a open source as well. You really need to know how to use the data. If you really don't know, or if you hold that data in a different angle, this data can kill your business as well. So that is, I would say, that is the biggest challenge in terms of data security. And today's world, data security, it's not only a, I would say, it's not a service. It's become a feature of your product. If you don't know how to build it, if you don't know how to handle it, if we can enhance our business. I think all my co-panelists are talked about how we can monetize the data, how we can how we can utilize this data to enhance our business, how we can get a better reach to our customer, how we can provide how we can build a better product out of this data. All are perfectly correct. But if you are not handle this data properly, or if you don't have enough security, if you don't have enough governance of this data can be a weapon to destroy your business as well. So security become a paranoid for for the complete fintech industry. And there are n number of new things are there, n number of new technologies are there. I believe most of the fintech we are mostly cloud-born company or cloud native company, I would say. So cloud give you a lot of benefit. At the same time, it's also bring some of the disadvantage in terms of security. So those things need to be taken care of in terms of your business. And data sharing should be there. If you don't able to share your data, if you don't able to allow people to play with your data, you cannot able to grow.
Vijay, from your perspective, you have been into technology as well as into business. So what are the key bottlenecks when it comes to sharing, especially from the perspective of security and governance perspective?
I would like to say that, and I will take the example in our current company. So I think the top five things which we faced is that accidental disclosure of confidential or personal information going out by email, or the guys copying it in the open cloud. So that's the first challenge. Second is misuse of data for unauthorized purposes. Means X data, Y data, means if suppose the people can be used some confidential employee data and something because of he's in XYZ admin role or what. That's the second challenge. Third is different jurisdiction laws, complexities involved. And fourth is different privacy laws like GDPR, which is going to come up, which will create more complications. Fifth is CCPA in USA. But at the ground level, the controls which we have put in place, that simple controls which we have built, that we don't. So we have to be very smart in selecting products, applying products, and maintaining the entire product journey.
How do you view this protection of risk and privacy of this data amongst the organizations here, and how are people building insulations around it? I would request Abhishek to share some perspectives on that.
So data is extremely powerful, right? And it is extremely powerful because it gives you insights, not only in terms of let's say, for example, opportunities. There are immense opportunities, immense areas, newer areas which are kind of coming by. But it is also giving you, let's say, insights into some of the blind spots. And that's where the fine line between how you kind of safeguard against the risks pertaining to storing these large volumes of data, quality of data, all of these are really, really important from an end subject standpoint. The crux is everybody wants to utilize data. When you talk to business would be the first one. They would say that for hyper personalization of services, unless and until I know more, unless and until there is a profiling of information carried out, I will not be able to do target marketing. I will not be able to do a customized service in a frictionless manner, which my end customer is looking into. But on the other hand, you will realize that there is an innate sense of privacy which is getting increased with end user, consumer, and that's where more and more programs, whether it is ad campaigns by Government of India or by different organizations are coming in. So my take on this is that so it is walking that fine line. We need to utilize this information in a risk sensitive manner, but we need to have those reasonable controls as is kind of codified as part of our regulations as well.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that interesting piece of information. Let me go to Shankar now. Gaurav, what kind of standardization techniques can be brought in to make this data sharing seamless?
The viewpoint I have with standards is that eventually it has to be kind of done by an authority that everyone agrees to, right? Otherwise, the standards again get, they're fractured. There might be many standards, folks following different standards for sharing. So that is something that I would say is yet to happen, right? Apart from that, I mean, there are many challenges in general sharing of data, right? At times, like fintech data can get large with respect to all the transactions and all the other history that every single person has. So even handling data at scale, the whole modeling has to incorporate how do you model data at scale? Do you have, let's say, sufficient engineering, let's say in the beginning, if you are starting with the data sharing, do you have that kind of engineering talent also in-house to be able to manage all the data for all the analytics or other decision-making that you drive on top of that data? So I think folks would adopt for sharing of data if all of those hurdles come down, right? That sharing the data becomes easier, processing the data becomes easier, running decision analysis on top of it becomes easier. And at the same time, the privacy of the user, right, is maintained during the whole process. Like unless the user consents, to what extent do they want to reveal their information or the PIIs?
So what kind of standardization and what kind of methodologies do you recommend based on your experience in both business as well as technology?
From my perspective, what comes ready to my back of my mind is basically the need to maintain data. I think first and foremost, that's the key over here, because there are different kinds of data existing in different disparate systems, in different forms and in different manner. But the way how data is interpreted largely varies from either between organizations or within the same organization. There are different units or different functions who interpret the same data in many different ways. Okay. Now, so what is foremost required is the possibilities of how data is consolidated within each organization. So when I talk about data consolidation, what broadly comes to my mind is the presence of an enterprise data warehouse, which is EDW. So only when there is an enterprise data warehouse in a particular organization, would it result in some kind of a data sharing discipline or a data flowing discipline between different systems, and which ultimately converges into this data warehouse. So when there is a need to share data with maybe other external organizations or maybe with the regulators or even with some of the peer competitors in the sector to achieve a level playing field. So what ultimately happens is, it is this data which ultimately flows out from the data warehouse is the way how it will be ultimately be interpreted by the different stakeholders over here, be it the regulator, be it the fintechs, or be it the immediate competitors, or even by other trade and industry bodies, like maybe an industry association or whatever and the like. Okay, so once this data consolidation is available at one single point, so whenever there is a request for data coming in, be it from the regulatory side or be it from any of the other stakeholders, as I mentioned, so immediately the organization can swing into action to think about in what way that data request that has come out is likely to be interpreted. Okay, so that is the first and foremost principle that that readily comes to my mind. Okay, so once that is available, then the next step of moving on is basically in what form and manner the data flows out. Okay, so for that, there are again different kinds of data. There's a structured data, there's an unstructured data. I mean, there's a data which is going out, but which cannot be interpreted. Like, for example, when we talk of data, as Abhishek rightly pointed out, there could be a KYC related data, okay, which is more of static data. There might be another data which is more of business driven data, like how Varundeep mentioned. Okay, so all these are ultimately to converge in a form and manner how it is to be positively interpreted so that the outcomes can be achieved. Okay, because unless the interpretation is not happening the way it was originally envisaged, so it will actually impact the ultimate outcome of how that data is going to be utilized. Okay, so I think the structured format of a data very clearly needs to be templated actually. In what way the data will actually flow out of the organization. Number one. Number two, when it comes to the governance part of it. Okay, now when it comes to governance and what can be shared, what cannot be shared, I think that is something largely to do with between what is allowed and what is not allowed.
What kind of support we would require from the regulator and the policy makers to make this effective data sharing and governance?
Three things which we will require for standardization. First is easier to define policies that is done centrally, but also has distributed data ownership at the regional level. Second is enforcing policies at enterprise scale in a modern and cloud organization, because most of the NBFCs and fintechs, excluding banks, are on cloud. So that is the second thing, enforcing policies at enterprise scale. Third is central auditing and reporting, such as compliance reporting, auditing permissions, etc. These are the three things which has to be done centrally at the HO level and needs to have the distributed data ownership at the regional level. So these are the three critical pillars which we should use for ensuring that it is governance is put in place.
From my side now, what I believe that the enablements that is needed over a period of time from regulators, policymakers, is a clarity on what is manageable by which stakeholder, who eventually is responsible for what all data, and who can collect what data. It should be very crystal clear. It should be defined clearly so that there is no gray areas in terms of who is keeping what, because it's very easy to run afoul of law, which is something that should be avoided. Second thing that is needed from the policymakers is, like Gaurav was also saying, right? We need a common body that people can agree to. Otherwise, what happens is there are, with multiple regulators in the country, if two different regulators have different rules regarding to data management, then it becomes very difficult for fintechs which are in multiple sectors to operate and organize that data, work on that data, whether it be storing, whether it be collecting, whether it be sharing. Third that is needed is not just from the regulator side, but everybody's side, is a belief system and investments that are needed to make it safe, secure. Create an environment where policymakers, the data managers, the data sharers can bring in confidence in terms of in the customer's minds, right? So therefore, the right investment in having literally military grade management of data securities, which we have been able to do till now, and education for the customer key. It is okay to share this data with this person.
I think I will agree with Yash. The first one Yash told that, there's a common body is very much required. If I consider IRD having a different aspect, altogether different aspect for data. If you check, RBI, they have altogether different aspect. So those things need to be a common body to manage. And one more thing is there are a lot of ambiguity in terms of, policies, right? They themselves, write this wording so generalistic. Anybody have their own understanding, anybody can have their own take away from that line. So that needs to be clear. And ecosystem, I would say, in the same time, it's as on date we are having I would say security still, I feel in India it's more like compliance requirement. It's not like that it's something you have to do, else it will be going to impact your licensing or business. Those culture is still not built, I believe, and that culture need to be built by I'm sure it should be done by a government authority only. No company or no fintech, nobody can do it, or no industry can do it. It has to come from some government organization only. Yeah.
Let us go to the last question now. So what are the realms of uh, trust that can be built in data sharing so that there can be a very cohesive sharing of data and without any fear of competition? And at the same time, what is that overall care that has to be taken by the ecosystem? Yash, would you share some perspective there?
So I think before we move into competition, collaboration, fear, etc., right, we have to first look at it from the person who's sharing the data, right? For him or her, the trust that is most important is the person who's asking for my data is asking only the right stuff and is going to use it for only the right thing. That's the most important thing that we have to be able to provide as data collectors, all the people on this panel and everybody else in the ecosystem, that we are not going to misuse your data. And that is a trust that is driven by education. That is a trust that is driven by technology. But most importantly, that is a trust that is driven by demonstration. We have to be able to convince the customer continuously that this is your data that we have, this is how we are going to use it, this is how we just used it a few seconds ago. You do not want us further to share it, so this is how we've removed it. Give him the confidence, just over communicate to the customer, therefore the customer gets a lot of confidence. In industry stakeholders, right, competition and collaboration, so the fear of competition or exploitation of one's own customer base by somebody else is a reality, and I believe will continue to be a reality for some more time. However, anonymization of data for sharing is important. While you said that I wouldn't be happy if my customers were exploited, I would rather be very happy if my distribution network is used to provide services to that end customer, who services that he or she is not able to access anyway today, right? So I think if collaboration comes in, the customer will eventually benefit. And if my customer benefits, the customer will learn to trust me more. And if the customer trusts me more, my business will grow. Lastly, the custody of data, the final custody of data should be with independent partial bodies as much as possible, so that eventually the veracity of data, the completeness of data, right, is not suspect.
We used to attend this quarterly. When I was the bank, I used to attend this quarterly IDRBT session where CIOs and CCOs used to attend. IDRBT is a training arm of RBI in Hyderabad. So their key things which came out has to be that there has to be a separate information security ministry. Now currently it's information security ministry has to be there. Secondly, there has to be an independent body like REBIT has come up, Reserve Banking Information Technology. One of my colleague and good friend, JPM, was the head. Now he left. So there has to be a drive from the regulatory body. Otherwise, we cannot leave it. So there's central ministry, separate ministries, regulatory body, and execution arm of the regulatory body is extremely important to see that data. They have to enable also. It cannot be fear that we only control. It has to be enablement also. Everyone has to get into that enablement mindset to make the things happen. So, and that can happen if you leave it only to the companies and private. Nobody's interested in data sharing and all, unless they have a trust. So that can be only be done by the independent body.
Wonderful. And from there, I go to Shankar for the last question. Shankar, from the regulatory perspective, from the policymakers' perspective, what do you think are the next level of support that is required to make this data sharing sheer pleasure amongst the people with a lot of trust, with a lot of security, and with a lot of care?
So what I was actually essentially saying is, from a regulatory standpoint, what must actually clearly come out is the boundaries, as Varundeep rightly mentioned, of what kinds of data can be shared and what cannot be shared. And once those things are clearly outlined by the regulators, they must also ensure the trust of the data sharing that is happening in terms of how the individual entities, both the sharing entity as well as the entity to which the data is shared, both take enough and more safeguards and enough and more checks and balances to ensure that that data is actually utilized for the purpose for which it was shared. So which means that the regulator must clearly come out with a guideline on the end use of the data. For example, if it's a KYC data, and if it's meant for actually propagating a particular service to the larger customer fraternity, it should not happen that the same data, after being shared, the competitor misuses it to cross-sell some of its own products and all that. So these kinds of contravention should not happen typically. That's what comes to my mind. So that's where the element of trust comes in.
Thanks, Anand Babu, for providing such an excellent platform from my side. And over to you others before we close the call.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot, Babu.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone, for a wonderful session. Thank you, Shankar. Thank you, Jake, and thank you, Varunji. And we look forward to more interesting sessions with you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.